people that say money can't buy happiness, for one, they don't know how to spend it. And secondly, if you think money can't buy happiness, you haven't given enough of it away, because, oftentimes a little bit of money can change someone's life. It can buy them education. It can buy medical care. It can buy a lot of things.
Hello and welcome to Get Yourself Optimized. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer. It is my pleasure to have Joe Polish with us today. Joe is the founder of Genius Network, an incredible group of heart-centered entrepreneurs, of which I've been a part of since 2018. Joe is a world-class marketer who's generated hundreds of millions of dollars for his clients. He's also the founder of Genius Recovery, a 501c3 nonprofit that helps addicts break out of the cycle of addiction and heal. Joe's newest book is What's in It for Them, and it's published by Hay House. Joe's been featured in Inc., Fortune, Forbes, Success Magazine, and U.S. News and World Report. He hosts the I Love Marketing, 10X Talk, and Genius Network podcasts. Joe, it's so great to have you on the show.
Yeah, great to be here, Stephan. I mean, it's been a long time, right?
Yes. And you've been on my other show, Marketing Speak, and we've had some great conversations there talking about some of your marketing genius. But in this episode, I really want to get into like the personal development angle. And you're a biohacker, you're working on your spiritual path, you're doing some amazing things. And I find you inspiring and just an awesome person.
Thank you. And likewise. And I appreciate all the support. And yeah, it's been good. And when I say it's been a long time, it seems like it's been a long time, but in the scheme of things, it really hasn't been that long of a time. It's just
might have been past lives and who knows what. But we've known each other in this lifetime since at least, I think, 2011 or 12, when I was involved with Neil Strauss and his secret society, which I was a member of. And then you came and spoke at some of his events, like the one in New York was the one I met you at.
Yeah. That goofball Neil, which I actually write about him in my What's in It for Them, because it's so interesting to see people's transition of where they start out. So when he wrote The Game to All the Way to the Truth, which I helped him, 10 years later, I helped him on that book related to the addiction stuff. It's just so interesting just to see, what happens in someone's lifetime and where they start and where they end up and what they do in between and everything.
Quite a journey. Well, you've had quite a journey too. Let's actually talk about that. Your childhood really set you up to not succeed in a way. I mean, if you just look at it at the service level, I mean, perfect timing and everything is divinely guided and orchestrated, of course. So at a higher level, that's true. But when somebody just looks at the facts and the struggles that you had to face and overcome, it was a lot. It was a lot. And so I also had struggles and turmoil in my childhood. And I remember my uncle telling me at one point that he just thought it was miraculous that I even made it out of my childhood alive, or not in jail or something, which I don't know if that's a compliment or not, but I'll take it as such. So anyways, what transpired in your childhood?
Yeah. It's interesting because I think when you're in the middle of a difficult situation, that's all though, as a child, right? So how would if you're rich, if you're poor, and I think even human, we're often a byproduct of our own perceptions and what we're seeing the world as. And until you develop the mental awareness or acuity to have perspective, how much of that do you have as a child? I mean, I think some kids are amazingly perceptive. As a matter of fact, I think sometimes when you're younger, there are stages where you actually see things in the world that as you get older, and depending on how you perceive life or how your health is, your schedule, your overwhelm, your environment, all these factors that biochemical, your dopamine levels, everything, where you can become aware in terms of how things smell, taste, feel. And so for me, yeah, I mean, the quick version of my childhood, and I always want to preface these things to where every day through reading, through watching, through conversations, I spend half my time in the addiction recovery field. So I hear a lot of painful parts of people's lives. I don't ever want to share anything in my story in a way to where it comes across like, oh, poor me, or my childhood was bad, nor do I. So I don't want to maximize it, and I don't want to minimize it either. Meaning, I don't want to say, oh, yeah, it just kind of happened to me and it was a gift and everything. And I do believe, what I do now is a gift, and I can translate a lot of stuff into gifts. And I also believe there's just a lot of painful stuff in it, and it leaves scar tissues. And even when I use the word believe, a belief means you're just not sure. So I'm open to change or alter a belief, because just because I believe something doesn't mean it's the truth. Just, facts are not, feelings are not facts, right? Just because I feel great doesn't mean things are great. If I feel shitty doesn't mean my life is shitty. It just is in a moment. So looking at my whole childhood, I mean, my mother died when I was 4 years old. I was raised Catholic. My mother was a former nun. She left the convent because she had gotten ill. Met my father in church. They ended up getting married. My father had a really tough life. So did my mother. I know much less about my mother's childhood than my father. But when my mother died, my father, who was a locksmith and really worked hard-working guy, struggling, he was injured. He had an honorary discharge from the army. He was drafted. I mean, his right leg was just broken multiple times in service, and he had a difficult life and he had a great job. But when he got drafted, he kind of lost that. And, he just was in a lot of physical and mental pain and anguish. And when he met my mom, that was like a huge highlight for him. And I have an older brother, 4.5 years older. And when my mom died from ovarian cancer, it just broke my father's heart. He never recovered. So we had a tough childhood. My father was left with two kids. I think he did. I mean, he did the best he did. I think everyone is, wherever their level of consciousness is, whatever their atmospheric conditions are, which is a term I got from my friend Don Wood, who's a doctor. He's a trauma therapist, and he's a Genius Network member. You've met Don, and so he talks about the atmospheric conditions. So the atmospheric conditions of my father's life were pretty tough. So were my mother's, and therefore so was my childhood to me and my brother. And we moved every year, every 2 years, because my father could never settle down anywhere. And it was a very interesting form of his inability to be okay, from my perception, wherever he was at. He would establish a business, work really hard trying to build up a clientele, because being a locksmith was not an easy business. It was oftentimes 24/7 emergency work. People would call locked out of their house. You'd have people arguing and locking somebody out of a house, losing their car keys. I mean, break ins, everything under the sun. And it was a very interesting business. And my father worked really hard. And he was also on pain medication because of his constant pain in his knee. And, he would always go to the Veterans Administration, and he had a love-hate relationship with them, because he felt, you devote your life to service and then you hurt yourself and then they don't treat you well. And so I saw a lot of stuff, and his the constant messaging I got was not encouraging and empowering. I mean, I cannot think of any sort of, yeah, you can do it. It was a lot of fear. It was, make sure you dress up before you go out in the cold. People are out to get you. It was very much this narrative that the world is not safe. And I say all this stuff because from the standpoint of, there's a lot of things I could be very critical about my father. And believe me, there was a lot of anger and a lot of annoyance that I had. And there's a part of me, as I've gotten older, I'm 55 years old now, when I sit and think, my mother died when she was 41. My father was a few years older. I look at my 40-year-old self. I was 35 when my father died, and he was 73, and he died of lung cancer. He smoked most of his life, and that was an addiction. I have a tremendous amount of compassion for how hard and how difficult his life was. And I also have a lot of respect for his work ethic. I mean, he didn't really give me much self-esteem. I cannot remember much. It wasn't, was it his job to give me self-esteem? As a parent, what is your job? It's to a degree, you take care of your child, you'd be a role model. But he worked really hard, and I wish I could go back and hug him when he was, you know, at a younger age, and just encourage him if that was a possibility, because he was broken. He was a broken man, and
So why isn't that a possibility?
look, I've done ayahuasca journeys. I've done all kinds of interesting stuff. There's been moments where I go and speak to that younger self, all versions, mother, father, myself, etc. Uh, just without it sounding too bizarrely weird for everyone. They're
They're used to my bizarrely weird if they're a long time listener to my show.
Oh yeah, look, I mean, I know with you we could talk about pretty much anything. The thing is like I look at my childhood. So what ended up happening is in the process of moving around a lot, I was a shy, scared, introverted kid. I got bullied. I got picked on. I would establish some levels of friendships, but today people consider me like a great connector, and I guess I am because I know a lot of people, and I definitely bring a lot of people together, and I do a pretty good job with it. It all stemmed because I was very disconnected as a child, and I was very scared, and I was very introverted, and I really wanted to be around people and energy and things like that. So I later developed that, but the beginning part of it as a child, it didn't come out of inspiration. It stemmed from desperation and pain and angst and sexual abuse, mental abuse, physical abuse, a lot of abandonment, constantly being uprooted, never feeling safe. So I never felt safe in the world. It wasn't even until, I mean, even right now with the last 3 years of the insanity of the propaganda and all of the fear porn that is being shoved out into the world through media and stuff. Even if you isolate yourself, I don't think is a necessarily a very smart decision of what is actually occurring in the world. There's just a lot of generational trauma that's happening right now, and in my lifetime, the last 3 years has been very interesting and very sad. And in the midst of it all, I'm very optimistic, and I do my best to wake up every day and make whatever sort of impact I can, live a good life, take care of myself. I use the $1 million racehorse analogy, which you've heard me talk about. If you had a $1 million racehorse, and every time that horse ran a race, you'd win $1 million. And the question is, how would you treat that horse? You wouldn't shove fast food down its throat. You would give it proper nutrition, rest, exercise. You'd have the best trainers. You'd have it running in the right races, not the wrong races. You wouldn't have it hanging around with loser horses or toxic people. You would not have it up at 3 a.m. Smoking cigarettes and watching porn and drinking alcohol and snorting cocaine. You would literally have that horse well taken care of. So the many years I've been in recovery now, which stem from my childhood, I had to go up and screw up my life for a while, from the unresolved trauma I had as a child to actually learn about connection. I mean, I had to go through many years of disconnection in order to get the complete contrast of what connection is. And so today, my business is running connection networks and trying to help connect people with themselves. Because if you're disconnected with yourself, it's really hard to, connect with other people. And so I could go on and on.
So being disconnected and desperate and abused and lost turned into a gift because that inspired you to become eventually a great connector and creator of opportunities. But you had to go through hell to get there.
Right, right. And I have I should go grab it. It's on the wall right outside this office here. I'm at my, you've been in my building a few times. This is where we hold, yeah, quite a few times. We hold, you've done speeches here, many. I have my Genius Network headquarters, and throughout the building, there's a lot of art, and there's a lot of weird things. And part of it is they have to, oftentimes they don't see things right away, but I strategically place a lot of clues and a lot of interesting things all around the building. And there's a gal that I helped in recovery, and she painted something for me that said, recovery didn't open up the gates of heaven to let me in, but it opened up the gates of hell to let me out. And I really like that one because sometimes you just sit in the pain pit for a while, like to get Eckhart Tolle, the pain body. And a good portion of my adult life, exciting, productive, making money, but just a lot of angst. And I certainly have euphoric recall. I mean, it's real easy to take on too much, to overwhelm myself. I mean, I'm still very skilled at doing that, And so what I have though is I don't sit in that place for long periods of time though. Before I used to be like months, weeks, sometimes years, where I would get on track and then I would have a major blow up. And part of it was just, I needed to esteem myself. I needed to really, but everything that I did, I just needed to go through that. It was, in order for any of us to go from version 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0, we, have the ability to look at the past and say, okay, what worked, what didn't work. And so I was on this massive pursuit of learning. I mean, I'm sitting in a room right now and you can see some of the books behind me. There's 2,200 books in this particular room. Some of them are very valuable and others are just regular books you can buy for, 10, 20, 30 bucks. But the every one of them has been scanned. And out of all these books, there's this little device we have that scans, the ISBN number and the barcode and, what's the replacement value. There's $88,000 worth of books in this room. And which is always, I'm going to have to go through the program and find out which one, because some here, there's a couple that are worth a lot, which makes it, because if they were all worth like 20 bucks, it'd only be worth half that, right? So what are the books that are really valuable? And what I've learned is the most expensive information in the world is bad information. We can spend a lot of money on information. I sell $25,000 and $100,000 connection groups, right? It's a lot of money, but it's all relative, right? What's a lot of money? You can get a lot of free information online, but a lot of that information is bad. And it doesn't matter if it's free. It doesn't matter if you pay for it. The most expensive information in the world is bad information. And I used to be on this massive pursuit to consume as much information as humanly possible. And I've now learned you're better off mastering a single book than trying to read like 10 or 20 books quickly, because you can consume, 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 consume. But the thing with the monkey mind is this constant need to learn, learn, learn. And so what I learned in recovery is that unlearning is oftentimes more valuable and more important than learning. So in my journey, I learned a lot of stuff, but some of the things I picked up were not serving me very well. And through the unlearning process, the letting go process, and that's where spiritual practice and meditation comes in. And I'm very careful to say God. I mean, we can talk about it. We talk about anything. There's nothing that's really off limits with me. It's just that word represents different things for different people. Because I was very much manipulated by people using God as a form of gaslighting and spending thousands of hours of my life praying or trying to talk to a energy, a force, a being, an existence, a concept that I never even felt was there, but still doing it.
And how do you feel now?
I believe something cannot come from nothing. What I feel now is everybody has the right to have their experience. I do my best not to lord my beliefs on anybody because they've not lived my life and nor have I lived theirs. So I try to come from a place of acceptance. I've seen thousands of people, be it 12-step rooms, recovery groups, things that I've seen in mostly the recovery world, where people are sharing the most preposterous, to me, versions of a belief system that I not only cannot connect with, I'm like, you are absolutely insane in my mind. I wouldn't say this to someone. But what I look at is your life working? Are you helping or hurting other people? You recently shared a interview that you did with my buddy Tim Ringgold that I don't think is out yet at the time that we're.
It will be by the time this episode's out. Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. And you guys are talking about what was it where Tim was saying something along the lines of it doesn't matter what my belief is. Do we work well together? Does it function? Some along those lines. And there's also things that you both are talking about with experiences. And Tim's telling the story after his daughter Bella died. I mean, I went with him on a trip. The first trip he'd taken, I took him with me to Florida. We were actually supposed to fly to Egypt. Crazy story. And it was the first time he got away after his 18-month-old daughter Bella died. And Tim was a guy that would play music for people in hospice centers while they're dying. I mean, he does grief retreats. I've actually been through his grief retreats. I mean, he's a phenomenal human being, extremely compassionate, has a crazy story of addiction recovery. And, we've known each other for a long time, over, 20 years. The thing with all the different people that I've sat around, he sat around, you hear all kinds of different versions of what someone believes to be God. But, my friend Ned Hollowell, the ADD ADHD psychiatrist, he has a great line, which I don't think it's his, but he's the first one I heard say it was, Lord, help me to search for the truth, but spare me the company of those that have already found it. And, and in 12-step groups, you'll hear religion is for people that are afraid of going to hell. Spirituality is for people that have already been there, been through it.
I think there's a powerful distinction that I don't really hear much talk about, but I saw it as a meme on some social platform. I forget where. I'll include it in the show notes. But it's this cylinder in three-dimensional space. It's drawn as a 3D image, but then there's these two 2D planes that are like perpendicular and intersecting, and one has a shadow cast from that cylinder, and it's a rectangle. And the word above that object, or the two-dimensional shape of the rectangle, is true. And then on the other perpendicular plane, you see a shadow of a circle, right? That the cylinder is casting a shadow of a circle because of the angle, and that is also labeled as true. But the truth with a capital T, is it's a cylinder, and neither of us see that. So your truth, it's a circle, and my truth, that it's a rectangle, are both true, but they're not the capital T truth. None of us can see that. And that helps kind of frame meeting people where they're at, so that I don't try to push my own uh, agenda, dogma, belief system, or anything like that, or even experiences on other people. If I can talk to God, you can talk to God, but we all have different paths. And for me to lord that over somebody is going to cause pain. And you can't, this is a Jewish wisdom, you can't perform a mitzvah while simultaneously doing harm. You can't make somebody feel bad or not be available for them, not do the dishes when they need you to, and go and pray instead, and expect that you're getting brownie points in heaven for that.
Right. Well, and a lot of people actually, I think, behave well because they have some sort of fear of, if they don't, they're going to be internally punished. And I know some pretty awful performing, behaving humans that really hurt other people, that live a quote unquote very spiritual or religious life in terms of the veneering and in terms of the
Surface level, yeah.
yeah, in terms of the virtual signaling form of ways they use that. And I have seen, look, I've been in high profile recovery groups with clergy, famous politicians, Academy Award winning actors and actresses, NFL players, NBA players, famous musicians. I mean, going back, 23 years ago when I first joined a high profile group, and I've seen some pretty, people that the world admires and looks up to, and some that tout certain belief systems and whatnot. And then, they're living their life in a completely different way. Now, the benefit is all those people are there trying to get help, kudos for that. There's a lot of people, though, that, in the personal development space, in the made for marketing spiritual leaders, I think most of them are full of crap. There's some that I think are really awesome and authentic, and there's everything in between. And I also, have to constantly question my own beliefs. I mean, I always say, what am I going to think about what I'm thinking right now, 10 years from now? How often do we think about our thinking? My friend Dan Sullivan, I've had quite a few podcasts with him on our podcast show about thinking about your thinking and thinking about your perceptions. And the interesting thing about being a human, I have to tell myself this all the time. I think we're wired to always think we're right. Even when we're wrong, or very wrong, we could very much think we are very right. And I want to constantly develop that awareness muscle of mine so that I don't ever get caught in the trap. That whole saying, people judge themselves by their intentions, they judge others by their actions. So we could, even people that have hurt people, well, I didn't intend to hurt them, but you did. I didn't intend to steal that, but you did. And so the question becomes, what's the result of someone's life? If what I'm doing is expanding myself and others, I think that's a pretty good thing. If what I'm doing is contracting myself, contracting others, a lot of it's energy. So to go to the whole thing of what is God, I mean, I have a lot of friends that are like atheists that are brilliant, nice, kind, caring, compassionate people. And I have other people that they really think that I just think are kind of doing rotten, not kind of, I know they're doing rotten things. I know they're manipulative. I know, and I do believe there is it might be words, but I definitely think there's a lot of good and there's a lot of evil. And so, like, for instance, I won't mention this one person's name. He's very famous, smart guy, brilliant guy, atheist, and Jordan Peterson. I recently met Jordan Peterson. Jordan is very articulate, very outspoken about his Christian beliefs. These guys could not be more opposed in terms of their belief in a God, but they've also, Jordan's had this person on his show, they're friends. It's fascinating. And so, you don't always, I always look at when someone believes in something I don't believe, I play a little bit of a game with myself and say, because when it comes to connection, I look for the pain points. Uh, you know, if I had to defend or argue for that, what would be my basis? Not that I want to argue, because you actually don't change people's minds very much by arguing. I think you can learn a lot through debates, although I wouldn't consider myself good at debates. I don't like confrontation. I'll get into debates if I have to, but not because I want to be cruel or make someone look bad. Most of what I do, I'm just trying to learn. I mean, I'm always on a path of like, what don't I know? Why am I not seeing it this way? If someone has a different political belief than me, I first approach it from, what is that serving for them? How do they, because in their mind, that there's a reason they believe that. Why do they support this sort of thing? Now, it doesn't mean I change my mind, because there's a lot of people, like most of the politicians and world leaders that are leading the world right now, I wish all of them would go through a medicine journey and,
Plant medicine.
develop some, yeah, plant medicine. Yeah. No, I
Not
don't mean like
Prozac
the
journey.
toxic. Yeah, no, not much of the toxic medicine that they, because my girlfriend is a medical doctor, and there's a lot of my clients, a lot of my Genius Network members are in the health field, naturopaths, integrative doctors, functional medicine doctors, regular medical doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists. And there's a lot of good doctors in the world, and there's a lot that have been hijacked by a very toxic system. And whoever profits from the crime is guilty of it. That's what it boils down to. And so if you're in the business of hurting people, I was raped and molested as a kid, and I was paid money not to say anything about it. And it was the most confusing, complex, embarrassing, shameful. It ripped almost any little bit of self-esteem or self-worth I had, and just made me feel like a human piece of. And it took years to develop any real sustainable sort of sense of worth. It was very, very difficult. And there are people that are rapists, and I don't mean physically raping people. I mean doing things without their consent, non-consensual control. And there's many ways to rape people in that way. all forms of rape are horrible. And the unfortunate thing is most people that hurt others were the same thing was done to them. And so to find like understanding, because I've it's all volunteer work. I've sat with a lot of people. 95% of the people that I have helped with or sat with in recovery have been abused physically, sexually, and a very small percent have abused others. And when they attempt to make amends or to deal with it, because a lot of people don't, and that's the unfortunate thing. We have such a culture of like burn them at the stake that you know if people knew what happened to so many of other individuals, I think they would think differently. I remember Daniel Amen's talking about brain scans on this interview I did with him years ago. And he said, if you saw the brains of serial killers, you would rethink the death penalty because these are very sick brains. And none of that is an excuse for violence. And when I say an excuse, to understand why someone does the things they do, you get understanding. None of that is to be said like it's okay that someone hurts someone, especially in violent physical ways. I mean, so I tend to have in one of my interviews at Gabor Mate, I asked him the question, how do you go throughout the day if you are having to interact or you still know the person that raped you or abused you or hurt you or betrayed you? Because almost everybody has been hurt or betrayed by someone that they actually still know. And a lot of those people are colleagues, former friends, family members, priests, teachers. That's where a belief in a higher power, something greater than yourself, actually comes in. There's this saying that is in 12-step groups that you'll hear once in a while in recovery rooms that, God never gives you more than you can handle. And hospitals and treatment centers and mental institutions and prisons are filled with people that got more than they can handle. And so the question is, where does compassion come in? And I do know you can't punish pain out of people. You know, if people are violent, if they're psychopaths, sociopaths, incapable of having empathy for another human, you know, some people are a danger to others until there's another way. And there's always ways. We try to punitively treat that. But just to give you some stats, in America, 25% of the world's prisoners are incarcerated in America. We're one of the highest incarcerating countries, if not the highest incarcerating country in the world. And 40% approximately committed a violent crime. That's a different category. 60% have not. 80 to 90% of people that are arrested or thrown in jail or prison, drugs and alcohol were involved. There's a tremendous amount of people that are incarcerated that are simply struggling with addiction. Again, it's not an excuse for criminal behavior or doing harm. However, if you understood the atmospheric conditions of their lives, it would actually make sense. Jordan Peterson talks about, he was being asked a question, so many videos with him out there, but where someone was talking about sexual assault. And he said, well, in college campuses, 50% of people that are murdered were drunk. 50% of people that murder were drunk. And the majority of date rape and the majority of assaults, either one or both of the people were intoxicated. And so there's all this talk of you got to have consent, there's party culture in universities and campuses where a lot of this is taking place. He's like, if you really want to stop the issue, you stop drinking. You stop the intoxication, because when people are inebriated, they tend to do things. And so, so much of my focus on addiction recovery, I can explain most things, including the entire pandemic, through the lens of addiction. There's a very interesting book written, I don't know how many years ago it was, called War is a Force That Gives Us Meaning. We live in a world that people are culturally addicted to war and patriotism, standing for this side, being opposed to that side, there is a high dopamine surge that comes. So addiction is a response to trauma, and it's also biochemical is off. My friend Dr. Anna Lemke, who wrote an amazing book called Dopamine Nation. I'm doing an interview with her at this year's annual event, and she explains the biochemical aspects of addiction. Dopamine. If you take a rat that is starving and you remove the dopamine from this rat or mouse and put it in front of food, and it is physically starving, it has no dopamine or not enough dopamine, it will die. It will just sit there and die because it doesn't even have the motivation to eat, even when it is starving. So humans are very similar. I mean, we are a bundle of biochemistry. And so to go to the topic of health and biohacking and how to take care of yourself, part of this is just uh, not being a physical specimen that is in very poor health. It's not just physical, it's mental. I mean, how, you know, if I got zero sleep last night, and this would be a completely different interview. And if I got better sleep last night, because I didn't get good sleep last night, it wasn't horrible. I didn't stay up all night, but I got less sleep than I'm usually, and I don't know why. I exercised yesterday. I got in a sauna and a cold plunge. I meditated twice, and I still had a crappy night of sleep last night.
How do you find out why? Because this is a big question that, for me, once I started receiving information from above, it's like, wow, how could I not tap into that universal wisdom and the kind of universal Google? How did I even manage to stay alive this long without it? Like, for example, so this spiritual coach I work with, but he has this question of, why is this in my movie? So why is this, whatever, lack of sleep or challenge, trauma, or whatever, why is this in my movie? Somebody just cut me off on the freeway for no reason and then yelled at me or whatever. Why is this in my movie? Because it's in your movie for a reason. There's a purpose. There's a message. There's something to unpack. So how do you unpack it? Because what I used to do is just not very much, but now everything is a reflection, as it is above, so it is below. And it's like, okay, so why is this in my movie? Why did this happen? I reflect on it. I also ask God for guidance on this, and I get answers. So why, for example, did we not find a house yet to buy? We're in Florida, and the market is overheated, and there's not a lot of inventory, and things are crazy overpriced, and so forth. So logically speaking, I could answer that, but that's not the real reason. I finally got the real reason last night after I asked. So I asked God for why I'm pushing away this house that we're meant to buy and move into. And the answer I got was, I'm attached. And then I'm like, oh, what am I attached to? And I was thinking maybe the ducks. I love the ducks in the backyard. They've been here for years. So we're in a rental, and there's a lake right in our backyard, and it's not about the ducks though. Oh, okay. What is it? Is it the geese? No, no, it's the lake. I was attached to the lake. I had to release that attachment, but I didn't know to release the attachment until knew I had the attachment. And it all came from first having the desire to inquire and to um, know why that's in my movie, and then to have the humility to know I don't have all the answers, and then to ask for the guidance, and then it came. So I don't know if you've had experiences like that where epiphanies or insights or revelations came to you, maybe in an ayahuasca journey, but this is something that would be like part of your daily practice, part of your daily collaboration and communication with God. And you could ask that same question about your sleep. Why is this in my movie? Why did I not get enough sleep? What's the lesson? What's the message for me?
Yeah, uh, to the point of what is the message, there is a reason. I think not always in the moment, and sometimes it takes a while, and sometimes it takes weeks, months, even years. I love the concept of comedy is pain plus time equals comedy. Whenever you have a lot of pain in your life, you can often, and I think everyone that's listening to this can relate to this. Think of something that you can look on any experience that and you're like, that was really actually funny that that happened. But at the time, it wasn't funny at all. As a matter of fact, some of it was some of the most grueling, heartbreaking, agonizing, like, why me sort of stuff. So I believe pain is a messenger. I think back pain, knee pain, neck pain, physical pain, lack of sleep, physical ailments, I believe within all of it is kind of life's nature's way of saying, hey, pay attention, neon signs, look here, something's going on. And, you're around entrepreneurs all the time. We go to a lot of meetings with a lot of smart people in the entrepreneurial world and in other parts of the world too, right? And workaholism is the respectable addiction. And the way that most entrepreneurs take time off is they get really sick or they get really run down. And it's like, all right, if you're not going to take some time off, we're going to make you sick. We're going to give you some sort of hurdle here that you're not going to be able to jump over because you need to stop, right? And so the conversation you have with Tim Ringgold about the ants when he was looking down and having what he was saying, his dialogue with God. When I was meditating this morning, that popped into my head. And I don't, I was trained in TM, Transcendental Meditation, in 2013 in Fairfield, Iowa. I went and spoke, at Maharishi University and all that. So Bob Roth is a friend of mine, and I've done week-long meditations with Joe Dispenza. Gave him a cowbell at one, and I told him he could really improve the meditations if it was a way to punk Joe Dispenza. It was really funny. He actually liked it a lot. It was comedy. But I think it's funny that so many of the ways that people are trying to meditate and connect is through technology. I think some of it facilitates it. I mean, certainly, I have a VR company that's we're the only VR app that on the Oculus store that is an educational platform, not doing gaming, not it's just educating people. And so I don't want people to live in a tech world. I also know enough, being a business owner and a marketer, you oftentimes have to meet people where they're at, right? And so I think it's kind of amusing how many people need to wear a wearable in order to go to sleep or need to track everything. So I have a bit of a love-hate relationship as I look out, and as we're using apps to try to get close to nature because the world is being so programmed that that is the way to do it. Because I don't want anyone to live in a VR world. I just want people to dip in there for a little bit if it will expand them. But if it contracts you, what's the point? So the reason I bring all this up is like I have a friend who actually created the Bible app, which is the most downloaded app, you know, of all time. And that company was sold a few years ago, but it's the way we receive information and the way we interact, what is consciousness, what is connection. We're more connected than ever before in human history electronically, but I think we're more disconnected as humans than ever before in this stage of existence. And I say as a whole, because there are people right now, it is not lost on me at all how blessed of a life I have. There are probably 3 billion people on the planet. Their dreams right now, their dreams would come true to change places with me and you and most of the people that are listening to us right now. Even if it was just for a day, it would be the greatest part of their entire existence because some of them live such tortured lives. Not all the time, not 24/7. And I'm not talking about people that have money and don't have money, because I know some very rich, miserable people, And I know some people that do not make a lot of money that are some of the most happiest, connected, caring, compassionate, loving life individuals you'd ever meet. And, everyone can probably experience having gone to some country that doesn't have a lot of money, but you met some really nice, really connected people. So, connection is more of an inside job in the environment that you're in than it is an external, because there's a lot of people that live in prisons with golden bars. And I became a millionaire before the age of 30. And I'll tell you, having money's great. I don't poo poo money. People that say money can't buy happiness, for one, they don't know how to spend it. And secondly, if you think money can't buy happiness, you haven't given enough of it away, because, oftentimes a little bit of money can change someone's life. It can buy them education, it can buy medical care, it can buy a lot of things. And at the same time, like Jim Rohn says, you can't pay someone to do your push-ups for you. And if you give money to someone that is like out of control, money can buy almost any vice that your twisted brain can come up with. And so oftentimes some of the most difficult, painful addiction stories I've seen have been from people of means that are very smart, that have a lot of money, but addiction is not an intellectual thing. It is, the issues are in the tissues. It is a trauma. And the ones that seem to have the hardest time with recovery are the ones that think they can think their way out of it. They can power their way through it, and that's a bit of complexity. There's no simple answer to that other than try to love them, try to enroll them. Don't tell them what to do, because the addict mind doesn't want to be told anything. It doesn't, even if you tell yourself that. So the Ram Dass line, we're all trying to walk each.
We're all just walking each other home. Yeah.
Yeah. And I always go back to that, especially when I'm like pissed at someone. And I could sit here and try to act like, oh, I've never, I think there's a lot of value in annoyance and anger. I think there's a lot of value in the shadow self.
Well, it gives us contrast. It gives us something to uh, push against and to base our decisions on what we want, what we prefer. If you had no contrast, what would you prefer? You wouldn't even know that there's a choice there. But knowing that you're in the sunshine and that you had contrast because it rained last week and you prefer the sunshine. So you can look at that as contrast, or you could look at it as tragedy, or God not giving you your fair shake or whatever. Let's just how you interpret it. But contrast is the name of the game here, and without it, you don't learn.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I have a, so we just recently, I've known him for over 20 years. Brilliant therapist. He's worked with billionaires. I mean, you probably remember my interview with him at the Genius Network event we did last year in February. Ken Wells. So Ken is, he's sat with more billionaires, more famous people than most therapists, and he also will volunteer his time. He will go sit with, sex offenders incarcerated in prison. And I'm like, why do you do that? You don't get paid for it. You're already a busy guy. More people would like to hire you than you physically have time for. And he used to be a minister. Openly talks about addiction. He writes a blog for geniusrecovery.org that comes out, now it's coming out every Tuesday and Friday. It's not written by AI. It's written by a guy who's got decades. He's 70 now. And Ken is just a brilliant guy. And I would ask him, why do you do that work? He's like, well, because I think we can see ourselves in every human, no matter what good or bad they've done. When things get so difficult, what causes someone, what happened in their life. And he comes from a real place of compassion and understanding. And, I've really learned, like, I've sat and been a recovery coach for despicable people that I personally do not, the judgment side of Joe has to be like, man, this is a difficult one. I don't,
Or even just saying the word despicable is full of judgment.
well, absolutely. And what I do though is I surprise myself when I switch on the what's in it for them, the caring, compassionate. I don't actually interact with them that way, at least on a conscious level.
But even using the label despicable changes how you show up in the vibration that you have when you are in service, or at least believe you are in service to that person or to those people. So yeah, everybody is just in one sense a reflection of you. On another, in another sense, they're all just sparks of God, and they lowered their vibration so low to be able to um, play a supporting role in your movie that gives you some insight or some lesson or some opportunity for growth or some uh, impetus to climb that ladder to God.
Well, let me clarify too, because when I say despicable, as I sit and think about it, I don't think I have approached, and I'm trying to think because I don't want to just say this because we're having a conversation. I want it to be a real accurate analysis of how I look back. Some of the people that I've worked with, even associated with that I don't anymore, at the time, I didn't consider them despicable. It's usually despicable comes later when I look at the whole course of it. And when I say despicable people, I'm really describing behavior. I don't think most people are come out of the womb evil or intending to do harm. I mean, I don't think anyone comes to work every day and says, I'm going to do a shitty job at work, even though you and I have both had employees that are great and others we've had to let go and others that weren't right fits and friends that were great at one time and then we're no longer friends. So, I really do my best to, when I'm thinking for my higher self, whatever that is, which I'm not always there all the time, I'm a human. I really do my best to have acceptance and to not like, the difference between shame and guilt. Shame, guilt is you regret doing something bad. Shame is I am bad. And most of my view is not this human is inherently bad. They have done bad things, but are they really bad? Now, some of the stuff I've seen over the last 3 years, there are people that I have really had. I mean, it takes an enormous amount of acceptance to be like, boy, this person is doing some stuff. I mean, I now think there are some people that are on the planet that are like the Joker in in the Batman movie. They just want to watch the world burn. I mean, they really get off on hurting people, and it is a bit of an exercise to voluntarily sit down with someone that has done despicable behavior or call whatever, call them despicable, and to still try to be a sounding board or to if see I follow the philosophy of 12 steps, which is the only requirement for membership is a willingness to get help. So I don't stop anyone from wanting to get help. If they're violent, if they're in the moment, that's a different story. But if we were a fly on the wall of everyone's life, I don't know, if people would probably want to just kill each other because how much, in this whole thing of no judgment, I don't really buy that sort of concept because you couldn't drive a car in without judging. Red light, green light. That's a judgment. Now I know what people mean when they say no judgment. It means no harsh judgment. It means acceptance. It means but at the same time we're always judging all the time. That's how we make decisions. Someone listening to this or watching this right now had to make a judgment if they should spend their time listening to me and you versus any other option that they have. So we're always judging. The question is your judgment expanding you and humanity, or is it contracting? And the truth is, I think, is it's both all the time. And we just learn to make better judgments. I mean, what I learned about success is not that things, quote unquote, get easier, even oftentimes they do, because I teach people how to have an elf business versus a half business. What happens though is you build up a tolerance, you build up resourcefulness, you build up awareness, you learn how to navigate potholes, landmines, difficult people. Um, you know, and I'll tell you, at the end of the day, I am happier with who I am today than at any other point in my life. I don't know if that has something to do with getting older, all my life experiences. I mean, of course, it has to do with everything. Or I just learned to not take. I mean, 20 plus years in recovery prepares you for a lot of stuff that I wasn't aware of how useful that would be. I'm at the point where even if someone's not actively struggling with an addiction, I think they should go to open 12 step meetings. And 12 steps, yeah, I know I've mentioned that several times. You know, I've written 2 books on addiction recovery. 12 steps is just one part of recovery. It's not the end all be all. And many people don't recover from 12 steps or just from 12 steps. But most people that poo poo 12 steps, I always use the analogy like people, you know, would you ever join a gym, not go to the gym and then say gyms don't work? You would never say that. Or would you join a gym, go sit on the bench, not bench press, and say gyms don't work? I mean, no, you would never say that. But people will go and sit in a 12-step meeting. They'll sit in on it, but they won't get a sponsor. They won't do the steps, but they'll say 12 steps don't work. Well, it's not an attendance group. It's a step group. And so there's a lot of people that say this doesn't work, that doesn't work, your book doesn't work, Stephan, your event doesn't work, your formulas don't work with what you teach people. Well, actually, they do if you work them, you know, and in health activity or a spiritual practice, you have to do it. And
Yeah, it's so easy to be a critic. It's a lot harder to
yeah,
be a creator, and it's impossible, I think, to do both at the same time. It's binary.
yeah, no, I agree. I totally agree.
We're out of time, so I just wanted to like get a parting word or wisdom, a word of wisdom from you about what our listeners' next step should be. What would be the takeaway and next action for them based on our conversation?
What I would say is every passing moment is another chance to turn it all around, which is a great line out of this wacky movie Vanilla Sky from many years ago. Remember that? And you know, my philosophy is what's in it for them. That's why I wrote a book called What's in It for Them. And the opposite of addiction is connection. And in order to connect with other people, you have to be connected with yourself. You know, one of the things you talked about biohacking, definitely cold plunges, saunas, exercise, eating. You know, you have to really go out of your way to avoid how to find useful things on how to live a better life. So certainly,
Well, there's certainly over 400 hours of content on this show alone.
exactly. Yeah. So someone cannot use the excuse that the content's out there. But if you have 1,000 options, you don't have any options. So what I would suggest to people is any problem in the world can be solved with the right Genius Network. It's you know, even though I have a group called Genius Network, I believe every human should have a Genius Network. Those are people that have skills and capability. And literally, if you are a giver, then pick up my book, read my book. I think you'll like it. I've read it if you prefer listening to audio, and it's for givers to have better boundaries around takers, so that if you are giving to the, because life gives to the giver and takes from the taker. And if you think just now, who are, you know, 8 people in your life that have been dominoes, they have helped you, they love you, they care about you, they gave you advice, acknowledge them, call them up and say thank you. It's oftentimes the easiest people, the ones that are so caring, are the ones that we often don't even pay attention to, because they're not yelling at us. It's, you know, the whole squeaky wheel gets the oil. You know, my friend Peter says the squeaky wheel gets replaced. And so, you know, replace the squeaky wheels in your life. If you want to have an elf life, easy, lucrative, and fun, get rid of the hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating. And, you know, I don't think success is not you arrive. Success is a series of doing things in a certain way to take care of yourself. If I started freebasing cocaine again, uh, you know, in 2 weeks from now, if I did it every day, my life would be completely unraveled compared to how it is. So it is a daily, consistent activity. And if you are disconnected in any way, shape, and form, take a look at it as why, because like you said, everything is a message. There's a message there. The question is, are we noticing it? Are we listening for it? Love is always there. God, source, is whatever you want to refer to it as, is always there. It's the clouds are in the way. The sun, when the sun is up, the sun is up. When the sun is down, the sun is down. When it's dark, it's only dark for a short period of time. Don't live in the darkness, but also, you know, don't burn yourself by trying to stay in the sun all the time. It's a bit of both. And just clear out the clouds. But when the storms come, you know, realize, you know, the atmospheric conditions, If you understood the atmospheric conditions of somebody's life, it would make sense why they are the way they are. You, me, everyone listening. And I believe we can change the atmospheric conditions of our lives, of our community, of people around us. You can wake up every day and write a comedy, a tragedy, a horror story, a drama. So, what story are you writing? And your life and your actions is what produces that. And we all have. And if you feel lost, to your point, tap into a higher source and ask for guidance, and you'd be surprised. So there you go. Those are my parting thoughts.
That was a lot.
A lot of parting thoughts. I tried to stuff it all in there.
Oh, the good stuff. Good stuff. Well, Joe, you're a light in the world. Thank you for everything that you do
Thank you, sir.
for everybody, me included. And listener, get out there and do some good in the world like Joe. And we'll catch you in the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.